Good evening and welcome to your homework. Tonight we're going to be working on successful summaries and your ability to write a quality summary. So you're going to need to have out the handout that you received in class today, a pen or a pencil because you will be taking a few notes, and a highlighter. So before you go any further, make sure that you have those materials. The first thing I'd like you to do is read both Summary A and Summary B, and you may want to pause the recording here for just a minute or two while you read those two summaries, because I'm going to just keep right on going because you can't start and stop this video lesson at any point. First thing I want to do is go through what to include in a successful summary. So on your handout, find where there's a blank spot where you can take these notes, and one of the first things that you want to make sure that you include in your summary is both the title of the work and the author, the person who wrote it. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you establish the setting. Oops, I can't type here. See, it's hard to type when I'm also talking and thinking and trying to do three things at once. But you want to give a real brief idea of where and when the story takes place. Next thing you want to do is include just a few of the main points of the story. And this is where it's a judgment call on your part as to what is considered a main event or an important event. My caution is that you don't want to go overboard and include too many details. So some things to keep in mind. You want one piece of exposition, something to introduce the characters, even when you're establishing the setting. That could be that piece of exposition. You definitely want to make sure that you are including the inciting incident. You don't need to say that it's the inciting incident, but you do want to introduce that event that brings about the main conflict of the story. Then you want to include at least one piece of rising action, something to let the reader know kind of how some tension is being built. You definitely need to include the climax. And again, you don't need to say that it's the climax, but you do want to let the readers know how that main conflict is resolved. And then you want probably about one piece of falling action, and let the reader know in your summary how some things are being resolved, and then you do want to include the resolution. Okay, this is not a book talk, so you don't want to leave the reader hanging as to what happens at the end. You do want to give that. Okay. Next thing you want to make sure that you do is that you present the story or the information, because you can also be given a summary of a newspaper article, something like that. And you want to do it in a concise, very, very short manner, and make sure that it is condensed, okay? You don't want your summary to go on and on and on and be just as long as the original piece of work. Next, the organization of your summary needs to be consistent. Let me finish typing here. There we go. It needs to be consistent with the original piece of work. So if the story is told in chronological order, you want to do the same thing. And that means that if the story goes from beginning, middle to end, you want to provide your summary of the action in that same way. If there's a flashback or a flash forward in the story, you want to make sure that you acknowledge that and present those pieces of the story in the same order in which they're presented in the original piece. And then the last thing that you want to include in your summary is make sure that your details are accurate. The last thing you want to do is lead readers astray and have them think something happened or something is true when in fact it's not. Okay, at this point, I want you to pull out your highlighter, and we're going to go through Summary B, and we're going to identify the pieces of this summary that make it a good summary. So let's look at our list. We need to include title and author. And so come on up here and take your highlighter, and we'll notice that right away we have the title and the author mentioned by the person who wrote the summary. That's a good thing. Then let's look to see if the setting is established, and here we're given that it's in both Iowa and Texas, so let's highlight that. Is that something else that is good? Some of the main points here. Well, we know that Thomas dislikes the car rides. That's good. And he's relieved when they finally get to Iowa. Now, I haven't read this story. Why can I not get this to highlight? I haven't read the story, but I'm guessing that those are pieces of the exposition. Then it looks like this here is the inciting incident. Thomas walks to the library one day and feels that a whole new world has opened up to him. We know that he reads a lot of interesting books, so that's probably some rising action. Looks like the climax here is he has to abandon the library and head back to Texas. So we'll highlight that. And it looks like this is also here part of like the resolution and falling action. Then we know that the library lady gives Thomas a book to take back with him, one that he can own and keep forever. Okay. You'll notice that so far the writer of this summary has done a great job. And let's look. The information is presented in a concise, condensed manner. I went ahead and I counted the number of sentences, and there are only 10 sentences in this summary, and that's pretty good because this is a chapter book. So we know that the story itself is a novel, and so to be able to summarize that in 2 paragraphs, 10 sentences, is very good. And Summary A, which is not as strong, is actually longer. It's 15 sentences and has much less good information in it. Now let's look at some of the things that you definitely want to leave out of the summary. And those include character descriptions. You don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about who the characters are and what they're like, because the readers will find that out when they actually read the book. Then you don't need to include any quotations in your summary. I know in the past you've always been told include textual evidence, direct quotations, and that's the advice you receive when you're trying to convince somebody of something. You're writing a persuasive essay or an argumentative essay, or you're trying to prove a point and support your reasoning. In a summary, you're just giving the facts, so there's no need for the quotations. Next thing you want to leave out is any analysis of the writing style, and no analysis of what the theme is or anything like that. Okay. Again, summary is just the facts. And then the last thing that you want to make sure that you leave out, oops, can't type again, is any of your own personal opinions. A summary is not the time and place for that. And again, it's just going to be the facts. And that concludes our lesson on writing a successful summary. When you come to class tomorrow, make sure that you have this handout, and I should see the notes written in and highlighting in Summary B. And then in class, we'll continue to look at summaries and do some close reading of them to make sure that you can identify on your own what makes a summary a good summary. All right, that's it, and I will see you in class tomorrow.